ladies and gentlemen. We are honored to be joined by the 3rd Viscount, Monckton and Brenchley, Lord Christopher Monckton, journalist, scientist, researcher. If you have to pick one man who is the nemesis or the polar opposite, whereas Al Gore symbolizes fraud, lack of integrity, man, bear, pig, selling NAFTA and GATT, selling globalism, selling deindustrialization. He is a swindler. He is a carnival barker who sells every projection and con game and fraud under the sun. You have Lord Monckton on the other side. Integrity, focus, documented, because I've done a lot of research on global warming and anthropogenic global warming and the neo-feudalist move and how this system will cause untold hundreds of millions to starve. Monckton has the incredible research news site where he documents it all, and we'll go over that with him today. We'll talk about the new Australian Prime Minister. One is thrown out for his global carbon tax. That's the main thing that Australians cited. Then, like shark teeth, another scallywag rolls forward, saying that's our #1 agenda, neo-feudalism. We'll talk about Gore and what he's up to. We'll talk about how the UN's trying to reorganize their global tax. It's all coming up. Lord Monckton, good to have you here with us.
It's a real pleasure to be back with you, and God bless America.
Absolutely. God bless England and everybody who's fighting for liberty against the EU takeover. Lord Monckton, out of the gates, what's most important in your mind?
I think the thing that broke today is the news that Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, who was swept to office on the one central pledge that he was going to introduce cap and trade, or cap and tax, has failed to do so, and the left of his party has staged a coup against him and dislodged him as Prime Minister, appointing somebody in his stead who will still not be able to get cap and tax through, but he has failed because he was overambitious, and he's now the second Australian politician to have lost office because of his belief, naive as it is, in the global warming scare. The first one, of course, was Malcolm Turnbull, the former leader of the opposition to Kevin Rudd, who was turfed out by his own party because he had wanted to go along with Rudd's emissions trading scheme. So he got the boot. Tony Abbott took over from him, and that was several months ago. And now Rudd himself has got the boot once again because of his naive enthusiasm for what is now the collapsed scientific notion that the world is doomed because we've added a tiny fraction of extra CO2 to the atmosphere.
Well, Lord Monckton, you forced them to now admit that we haven't been heating in 15 years. We've been cooling for a decade. They've been caught in premeditated fraud. I don't really think these people are naive. The leadership knows this is just a giant new taxing scheme and a way for government to, quote, end our industrialized society and deliver humanity into the hands of this despotic elite as feudal serfs.
I think it's quite worth remembering how it is that they concealed for as long as they did the fact that since the turn of the millennium on the 1st of January 2001, the trend of global temperatures has been a downtrend. Not a very significant downtrend, but it certainly hasn't been an uptrend. And as you rightly pointed out a moment ago, for about 15 years, there's now been barely significant global warming. How did these facts eventually come to light? Well, the BBC got in touch with me after the ClimateGate scandal broke, and they said, what questions would I put if I were interviewing Dr. Jones, who ran this unit whose emails leaked all over the world? And he's the one that compiles one of these global temperature data sets that tells us whether temperature is going up or down worldwide. And so the BBC took my questions and put them to Professor Jones, and one of those questions was, have we or have we not had a global cooling trend since the turn of the millennium?
Lord Monckton, got to interrupt you. We'll come back and get to the punchline on this straight ahead. Well, he is a tireless voice exposing the fact that anthropogenic or man-made global warming is a manifest fraud. And we're getting an important update. He joins us every month or two, and we really appreciate his time. Lord Christopher Monckton, 3rd Viscount of Monckton and Brenchley, of course, one of the chief advisors to Margaret Thatcher, a journalist, a scientist, inventor. and he is with us for the balance of the hour. We have routed for now the carbon taxers in the court of public opinion, but they're still implementing through states, counties, cities, regions, their carbon tax. So we're going to talk about how they've regrouped, how they're deceptively counter-striking, how they're changing their nomenclature with new lies for old. They've also got some organized counter-strikes on Monckton with straw men, manufactured attacks, so we're going to let him defend himself on that front. But out of the gates, you probably don't want to talk about this because you're a gentleman, but it is in Fox News, it is in the Associated Press, the Oregonian, that reportedly Al Gore, whose wife is now leaving him, was with this masseuse, and there are crazies who make stuff up, but we have no evidence of that, and it sounds like him. I mean, he just looks like a pervert. I'm sorry. I mean, if I saw him in a dark alley...
you wouldn't expect me to go there, because I try to confine myself to the science and economics of this question. What we can say is that Al Gore, whether he lied to his wife or not, I haven't the faintest idea, nor am I interested. What he has done is lie over and over again to the American people and the people of the world for great personal profit about the global warming scare.
But if it does come out that he did this...
listening to this,
Sure.
Al, baby, if you're listening to this, I've now been trying to get you to debate with me on international television on global warming for nearly 4 years. Every broadcast I do, I make the same challenge: step up to the plate or go away into your collapsing armchair forever. Leave the field free for us real men. And so far, Al, baby, you haven't shown the courage of your convictions. And the only conviction you're eventually going to get is a criminal conviction for racketeering under the federal RICO statute.
Absolutely, because there's clear evidence of that. This could be completely made up, that he groped this woman, though I tend to believe it just at a gut level, regardless.
Well, I'm not going there. I mean, I've made that very plain to you. That's not what I do. What I do is the science and the economics, and the science and the economics say that Al Gore is wrong, he's running scared, fewer and fewer people are listening to him. He now charges a fee. The Singapore government paid him a few months ago a fee of $300,000 to make one rambling, disappointing, diffuse speech about global warming. Nobody except the Singaporean government would now pay that kind of fee to him. But he is a busted flush as far as global warming is concerned. Nobody takes him seriously on that subject anymore. And indeed, nobody now takes the official bodies on this seriously, the official scientific bodies who have seen this as a way of making enormous money in rent-seeking subsidies from taxpayers. They're all discredited now. They've all passed from being scientific bodies to mere self-serving political pressure groups. They, too, are now discredited. We have just this week the United Nations Climate Panel, which is an enormous and growing bureaucracy, which has just announced that this time, because of the criticisms that it's been terribly one-sided in its previous reports, it's going to widen the number of scientists it gets writing its next report, but it's not actually going to widen their opinions. It's still only going to choose those who believe the line which it wishes to peddle. They're still not going to ask the real scientists who've done the real work, showing what complete nonsense the official line actually is.
Now, Lord Monckton, I want to go back to Al Gore and criminal prosecutions, and then I want to look at how they're regrouping, how they're trying to counter-strike, and get your forecast, as the leading general against these eugenicists, of where you see them striking next. But going back to criminal prosecutions, where are we on Pachari? Where are we on Jones? You got cut off on the break earlier when
Yes, indeed. Let's do Jones, first of all. He has been exonerated by the House of Commons. No surprises there, because our Parliament is the most true-believing of half-witted, credulous believers in this new religion of global warming. And they were not prepared to admit that they got it wrong by finding him wrong. So they of course, washed their hands of it and said he was a splendid fellow, really, which he isn't. He had destroyed data and procured the destruction of data from other scientists in a series of emails, none of which is denied, for the sake of avoiding getting anyone to check his figures and see just how much they were simply made up. So the fact that the House of Commons looked the other way is a very good indication of how the political establishment worldwide is not yet willing to admit what a colossal mistake it made. It's just like DDT all over again. However, there is, of course, the splendid Mr. Cuccinelli in Virginia, the Attorney General there, who is busy chasing after Professor Mann at the Penn State University to find out whether he, for the sake of getting grants, had in any way been improperly handling or using or processing official data. And that inquiry is still very much continuing. Pachauri was being investigated by the UK Charity Commission for having filed bogus accounts 3 years in a row in a charity in the UK of which he is the sole trustee, and it's the trustees whose job it is to file correct accounts. The Charity Commission, likewise part of the establishment, has now said, well, actually, we're not going to go after him. We're not even going to ask him to produce accounts for the year in which irregularities were proved by the complainant.